Like I say, over my existence, I've done many different things, like a gypsum pile where you allow water to come in, and then as it dries up, the gypsum crystals go up to the top or something like that, and then you empty it out. I had one such project that was like really old. Took like 1,000 years or something, or 2,000 years to do. Anyway, though, but another couple of my things were water treatment plants. I had a couple of deep underground water treatment plants. Basically, what we did is we came in from the ocean at a deep down level, and you come in and you're mining, and then you go down mining way down into this big cavern. And basically, when we were mining for minerals or mining for metal, basically we're pulling out the rock and we're making metal out of it, you know, smelting it and making metal pretty much. And basically, so we had these big caverns underground, way down deep, like 2,000 or 3,000 feet underground, or 1,000 feet underground. What you do is you go, and I think the idea was we'd go down, and then we leveled out, and then we went level. And I think what we did is we used block or something. We put like these sand piles and then brick or something like that, and create like these baffles. And then we'd go down, because the whole idea is you go down and then you level out and then you go down. And I forget what the deal is. I forget if salt settles or something like that. But basically, there are these great big baffles. We'd put blocks or rocks. I think we used granite stone actually. But basically, we built up blocks, and then we left like holes in the blocks. And then there'd be a sand barrier on this side, I think. I think what we did is we took a silt and sand barrier, and we put a sand barrier, and we did these baffles along, like 2 or 3 in a line. And as the salt comes in, I think the salt has a tendency to get clogged up in there or something like that. And yeah, salt doesn't want to move through sand, basically. You know, it wants to stay on this side, or wants to get all clogged up in there. And basically, by having like a 500-foot wide, because I remember we were doing 500-foot wide walls, you know, where the water would come down in, and it'd basically be gravity feed down, you know. The water would come in, and then it would go into a chamber, and then it would basically, you know, great big huge pipe, not pipe, but I mean rock. We're basically drilling through solid rock, so the rock is the pipe, basically. And it would come through, and then it would go down into this great big huge wide chamber, like half a mile wide, and then flat, and then it would come down these other pipes, and basically take stone, granite stone, and I think we'd cut the granite out of the stone out of the actual tunnel, because we're mostly mining for metal, but then there's granite stone, so we take the granite stone, we put it up, and then we put silt barriers against it, basically sand barrier pretty much, put it there, and then we put like, I think it's like 100 feet of that, and then it goes down again, goes way down again, and then it levels out again and goes into this another big half-mile wide room pretty much. And then you do that again, and we did that like 3 or 4 times, and I think it was mostly for irrigation water. And it was just a theory. I think we tested it out. We did a small scale test to see if the salt, we'd get actually effectively cleaner water without salt. I forget, we found a way to particulate sand that was small enough where it grabbed the salt. And it was in a room big enough where it could slowly move through, and basically the salt would just kind of build up against the wall. And eventually, you know, over like 500 or 600 years. Anyway, it goes down there, and then you go down into this big room at the very bottom. And I think the idea was, if you went through 5 or 6 of these little rooms where it came down and then went out, and then came down and went out, and then came down and went out, then you get down low, down into this big room, and then you could suck clean water directly up to the surface, I think, or mostly salt-free water, I think it was. It had a little bit of salinity or something like that. I forget what the deal was. Anyway, though, but it was mostly clean. It was natural, mostly clean water, pretty much, through these silt barriers. And then like every 200 or 300 years, you'd have to go down there and basically dig out the salt. But pretty much it's natural feed from the ocean. and it goes through the salt or the sand in the water. Like that's one barrier, you know, the salt on the thing, because so there's this big tunnel basically, and then the water basically goes in and goes down in there, and silt, you know, it just kind of mucks in pretty much anyway. So anyway though, but it basically is great big huge hole, and then it would go down into this room, and then it would go down again into another room, and then another room, and then finally down at like 3,000 feet underneath the ground, or I think it was 3,000 feet was the lowest point or something like that. There's this great big huge catacomb, and basically, like I said, they use granite stones blocked up, and then they would go every other stone. They would basically leave a hole. So when the water came in, it would just basically filter through the thing. And by having like a half-mile wide of one of these things, I think the widest one was, we had a 500-foot wide one, and I think we had like a 1,500-foot wide one, or 1,700-foot, I forget, wide one. We're basically 1,700 feet across by like couple miles long or something like that, or half a mile long, big chamber about like 50 feet or 60 feet high or something like that. And basically the salt water would come in, and then it would filter through like, we had one chamber, and then we had another chamber, and then we had another chamber, and then we had another chamber, and we had another chamber, and we had another chamber. Like 5 or 6 of these, or 20 of these chambers, you know, like you drop down 150 feet or 200 feet, and then level out, and then drop out on 150 feet, and level out, and then drop down another 150 feet. And I think there was 3 stages or 5 stages of this, where you drop down 100 feet or 500 feet each time. And then the idea is the water pressure from the drop gives you enough pressure where it'll force the water through the filters. When you get down, so when the water drops from sea level down to like 1,000 feet, the amount of pressure that's behind it, pushing it through the filter, through the sand and salt, the sand barriers, is enough to where you have like a couple hundred psi, so it like forces the water through the salt barrier, through the sand barriers, and then so you have all this pressure behind you, and then that squeezes out all the salt water, all the salt, and then the water just goes through. And by having like a 1,700-foot wide wall of this, you know, it's enough of a percolation factor that the water will get forced through no matter what. And then it just fills up until it gets full, and then it stops going. And there was like a couple of these different tombs, basically great big huge rooms, and then it emptied out into this giant big round half dome thing or something like that. This giant room, and from there we'd up to the surface, pump, and we might have even used, it might have been some sort of system too where we tried to use the water. I think we might have had like another water drop. We might have started to do another water drop, so where it drops, so we have another water drop or something, or we take out of some spot and we drop down 500 feet, and then we come out, you know, and then that actually provides for the turbine or something like that. But I don't think it worked. It got clogged up or something like that. But basically, the idea was by dropping the water or something like that. I don't know, but that only works like that. Anyway, though, but it would suck from that room or something like, you know, some sort of weird thing where the water would come in, and we sucked from that right there, so it provided half power for itself. It's like a power assist, where the water would drop down, it would drop into this room. We were sucking from right there, so the water flushing. No, maybe we came out and then we dropped down. I forget exactly how it worked. I was part of the design. It was a long, long time ago. But basically, it dropped down and we sucked from there, so the water coming in as it came in, it would provide half power, its own power supply for about halfway up, and then we just energized it a little bit from the surface with a steam power plant, and it would pump it the rest of the way to the surface, and you'd have nice clean water, theoretically. Anyway, I don't know. It was like a 150-year project or something like that. It was one of those crazy projects, and I just remember the very basics of it, basically, and basically and then every now and then you'd have to go in and clean out the salt, and then you'd have